how to publish a book? That is the big question we are asking today. Hello and welcome to Explain Like I'm 10, where we ask small questions which have some big and complicated answers, or maybe sometimes not. This one is a episode we are doing in this how-to series. We did how to run a restaurant, and now we are like how to publish a book. And joining us is the publisher of Westland, Karthika. And Karthika, I must tell people about Westland a little bit. Westland is our sibling organization, sibling company, I would call it. IVM and Westland are a part of the Pratilipi group of companies now. And Karthika heads the Westland division of it. And that is a publishing house. And it has published many, many things, including this one book that I'm reading right now, which is called Unveiling Jazbaa.
Oh, wow.
So Karthika sent this to me actually. I mean, one of her people sent this to me like yesterday. So I was just reading it. I should show it. And our union leader of spectators today is Urjita Wani. Now, Karthika, Urjita is a comedian. She's also a co-host of one of our podcasts, Has It Aged Well? This is her second appearance on
Yes.
Explain Like I'm 10.
Yes.
And she is going to ask you questions. And me. Yeah.
So my credentials include I have read a lot of books like Bal Bharati, the SSC textbook, the HSC textbook. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so like, sorry, Mills and no.
Mills and Boons.
No.
So this topic I wanted to choose, Karthika, because so as an author, a lot of people do keep coming to me asking कि भाई मेरा भी book publish करना है कैसे करेंगे, and I can't give them one answer, like because how it happened to me was weird. We'll get into that, but Karthika, just a basic question to begin with: how do you publish a book? How do you get a book published?
Okay, well, it's a very simple answer actually. How do you publish a book? If you have a manuscript, you put it through editing, you put it through a cover design, and you make sure that it's as good as it can be, and then you send it off to the printers, and
Right.
it gets printed, and that's the book for you. That's the basic thing.
So that is from the, okay, so let's break it into two, right? One is from the publisher's perspective, which is your perspective about how you actually publish the book, right? And then there would be from the writer's perspective, which is how do I get my book published, right?
Yeah.
So let's deal with the first part, like which is you basically publishing a book. So please explain like intricately how you do your job.
Okay, so I have a really good job, by the way, in the sense that it's the best thing in the world to be able to sit down and read all these books that come your way. They're all manuscripts at that stage. And there are writers who send them in. There are agents, literary agents who send them in. Sometimes they are friends who have friends who have written books who send them in. So basically, somebody sends in an idea or a proposal, which could be as basic as I want to write a biography of Narendra Modi, to here's a 35-page summary of the book I want to write on the future of democracy in India. Or somebody saying, I've written a whole novel, which is about Delhi in 2050 and the water wars of that time. And so here's the manuscript. Or it could be somebody saying, I'm writing a book on the water wars in Delhi in 2050, and I have written half of it. So can I please send you the synopsis and maybe 2 sample chapters for you to tell me whether you think I should persevere or you would like to read more. So more or less any of these paths are possible. And then there is the final other path, which is of someone who's already published the book, say in Canada or the US or UK, and sending it your way and saying, listen, I've just published this book. Do you think you'd like to publish it in India? So that's another route that could be taken. So manuscripts come to a publisher through any of these ways. And I'm sure there are some other more minor ones that I'm leaving out. And we then think about it as editors, as marketing people, as sales people. We all together decide in a publishing house whether it's the kind of manuscript that we think we can handle, the kind of manuscript that we might be good at editing and putting together. It's a kind of manuscript that we think we can take to market effectively and make a success of. And then together we decide what are the terms we can offer for this. I mean, there's a pretty standard template term in the sense of, royalties are paid and those kinds of things. If you want to go into detail later, we can do that.
Yeah.
But essentially, we go back to the author and say, we're happy to offer you a contract, and these are the terms of the contract. And then that's where the agreement is signed. And from then on, it goes into the sort of innards of the publishing business, where we then take the text on, we work on the editing, we work on putting a cover and layout to the pages, we go back and forth on multiple edits and proofreading, and towards the end we create a marketing plan that we then go back to the author with, and before it's published we know roughly what we're going to do to try and sell the book, and then we take it to sales, as in then it goes into the market.
Right.
No.
Urjita, do you want to publish a book?
I am not thinking about doing that as of now.
Right.
But then this whole concept, like at one point when I was like a voracious reader in my teenage, I actually like used to think कि मुझे book लिखनी है, novel लिखनी है. I had actually written a book called Vampire Diaries. Very original.
Wait,
Are
you
original.
the person who wrote that?
Yeah, I mean कहीं से आके HBO बोला कि you know what, तुम कल्याण से हो, हमको तुम्हारा आइडिया बहुत पसंद है, हम तुम्हारे एक शो बनाएंगे. But yeah, so have you? So I'm sure you must know about this book called Goosebumps, the series.
Yes.
So Goosebumps used to have another format, very interesting format, where at the end of every page they would have two options.
Yes.
Something that
choose
Black
your
Mirror,
own adventure.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah,
like something that Black Mirror did way later. And
Yeah.
I was really surprised कि यार R.L. Stein को कोई credit नहीं दे रहा इसका. What is this? So I had written a book like that choose your adventure, go over there. But like with my little imagination, how much मैंने 60 pages का book लिखा था. But yeah, I actually had a bunch of questions for you. Like now that I was thinking. So like first of all, what is the so you said that you can submit an idea also. It doesn't need to be like a detailed synopsis.
Yeah.
So like कितना brief हो सकता है ये idea? Like if today if I were to just tell you like I want to write a book about I don't know, just curly hair or straight hair or something like that. Like of course thoda, like can it be itna brief ki itna matlab it is not even a biography, it is just like a idea.
If you were like the most celebrated hairdresser in the country or the world, and you picked up the phone to a publisher and you said, I want to write a book on curly hair, they might say, oh yeah, great, let's talk.
Oh,
But if you're anybody less than the most celebrated in that space, then that'd be like, I'm sorry, what do you mean by curly hair? Stop and tell us a lot more than that.
Yeah, right. So the brevity of the idea depends on your status in society. And
Actually,
also your
expertise.
expertise. Yeah.
No, also like Karthika, this is actually an interesting point she brings in. So, the popularity of the person also obviously does a lot with who your decision making, right? The reason why I got published, it was a very bizarre story. So because of my Twitter primarily, right? Which is I was constantly tweeting and my tweets were going viral. So one commissioning editor, and I want you to talk about that also. One commissioning editor actually was a fan. So she approached me. She was like, oh, do you want to do like a book? And she was like, non-fiction karo. Right? And I was like, nahi, mujhe fiction likhna hai. And she's like, what will you write in fiction? So I was like, I will write a story, a satire on parliament, etc. So she had to push a lot, but got the fiction done. Matlab, jo bhi hua, uske baad, the entire process you described, right? Which is went to publishing. But what she asked me to do was ek to give sample chapters, as Karthika said, like 2 sample chapters of what the book is, but also like a 1-pager on what you want to do with the book.
Okay.
So essentially what she said was, imagine your book is published and uske piche jo likha hota hai na, like this part, which is the blurb. So write that and send it.
Oh.
Right. So essentially she wanted me to write a blurb with 2 sample chapters so that they get an idea of A, what is the overall idea and is it sellable, and B, like how is this person able to write. That will give, like the chapters will give that flavor. And of course the deadline setting happened, and kitne time mein doge, all the things. Then of course it got postponed to like 2-3 months after that, and then finally it got published. So
How
like,
long did it take for you to write the book?
The
And also,
first one?
were you toying with that idea way before she approached you?
Yeah, I was. So first
You
one,
manifested it then.
yeah, I did. So I've been wanting to be a writer since I was 15. Like you gave up on your writing dreams?
Yeah.
I did not.
Hey, I have also published a book called Vampire Diaries,
Of course.
exclusively available at my old house inside a cupboard.
But Karthika, do you want to add
yesterday
to
for the
this?
first time, I heard about something called the vampire facial. And since then,
Okay.
I've been thinking I should publish a book called The Vampire Facial. Do you know
Facial?
what that is?
What,
Yes.
what is that?
What is that?
So you have to do a session on dermatology for 10-year-olds, and then they will explain this to you.
Okay.
It's quite scary, but I
I'm
believe
intrigued.
it makes your skin glow for 6 months after you do it. Like 6 whole
Okay.
months.
That's a short time. Then I'm not interested. If it was a lifetime, then I would
6
have.
months is a long time for you to not have to do anything to your face because it will be like
Oh.
Fascinating.
I'm guessing like you just like prick your whole face with needles, like something, no? Is it
and then
I-
inject something in, yeah.
inject something? Yeah.
I think हमको एक dermatologist लेके आना पड़ेगा
Yeah.
इसके लिए. So, like-
But yeah.
This is
Yeah.
so fascinating. I was like, wow, this happens. And she's like, yeah, everybody does it. All the film stars and all these beautiful people do it.
So Karthika, when you get an idea though, like this, right? For
Yeah.
example, like you got this idea, then do you go about finding an author who can do this?
Yes, absolutely. So one thinks about who could write a book like that, who would be the best, who might know the most, and also who would have the style to be able to pull off on the subject. That's one way to do it. And then you would go and find that writer, approach them, ask them to write it. The second thing is you might say, okay, this is the expert. This expert can't really write, or maybe, experts often don't have time to write. They're making
Yes.
far too much money being expert at whatever they're doing. And book publishing doesn't pay, as you know, Meghnad.
Yeah,
So
yeah, very
they-
much.
Okay, no, this is great. I don't mind doing this because I know the subject, but I just don't have the time to do this. Then you would find what you might call a ghost writer or a collaborating writer, depending on whether they want to be known or how much money is being paid, etc., etc. Credits would be shared or not shared publicly. And that person would then spend time with the expert and write the book for them or with them. So that's the other route by which
Yeah.
books can happen.
And also like what she said, right, which is publishing books doesn't pay. That's very important, I must say.
Yeah. I wanted to come to that, but I thought ये पैसे वाली बात जरा बाद में करेंगे. But yeah, now that you have brought it up, I am most intrigued about that aspect.
Ask.
So, like how much, like what is the least amount of money you can get paid, and what is the highest amount of money you can get paid?
Well, you could get $1 million advance if you're Arundhati Roy or Vikram Seth or one of those, like, or Salman Rushdie or whatever.
Oh, wow.
Or Prince Harry, I'm sure, must have got a lot of money to write his autobiography.
I'm sure he got a lot more than that.
I'm sure he did, yeah. So there's a lot of money possible at that end of the spectrum. But you might get no advance at all if you are a writer who's starting up maybe, or who has not kind of got a sales history or a potential sales history that the team can see. Also, there are places like in self-publishing where you would pay to get published, not because it's as a service, you get someone to edit, you get someone to print. So there's a whole lot of things that are actually on cost that you would be doing. And so yeah, you could make a lot of money, you could make no money, or you might pay money. All possible.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the way it works, and Karthika, correct me if I'm wrong, so advance, right? So essentially, depending on your personal stature and whatever you are in society, the commissioning editor will come to you and you can say that, listen, I need an advance to write this book because I'm going to put in so much effort. It shouldn't be like, मुझे कुछ नहीं मिल रहा है.
Yeah, of course.
So they will give you like a whatever तुम्हारा value decide करके, like you can negotiate and then you will get that money. And then after the book is published, they will start cutting your royalty out of that advance.
As in?
So Karthika, can you explain this part also?
So basically, a royalty to an author is how the terms are laid out. If your book is priced at 100 rupees, you might get a royalty. A standard paperback royalty across the world and in India is 7.5% on that cover price. So for every copy that is sold of that 100 rupee book, the author will get 7.5 rupees. Right? So first, if you're saying that the sales team says, Acha, this book I think could sell like 1,000 copies, then you might say, okay, and that means that this person will get 7.5 rupees into 1,000. So I'm going to give this person an advance of, I don't know, maybe 5,000, maybe 10,000 rupees or whatever. And first, those 1,000 copies will go out into the market and be considered sold. So you will have earned out that first advance. And then the first copy that sells beyond that 1,000 or whatever the amount is, you would then start earning royalty on future sales.
Oh.
That's how.
So
it
like
is.
I got my book published in 2019, 18 actually, and my royalty got paid off this year. And now I'm actually making some money. Again, when I say some money, it's literally nothing. It's sad. I mean, Karthika, this is actually a very big reality hit me hard actually when I wrote this book. I mean, I knew.
What do you mean by
I have a
royalty got
question
paid
for you,
off
Meghnad.
this year? As
What
in, like,
if-
yeah.
No, sorry. I was going to say, what if you had said, I don't want an advance, right? You said,
Yeah,
I'm
true.
going to write this book anyway.
Yeah.
I want to be published, and I know you'll do a good job of publishing this book. So let's work together. Let me publish the book. And when books sell, give me the royalty. Right? What would happen then is you are not tied to some money that's already been given to you,
Right.
and you have a deadline against which you'd better make that money back. Otherwise, you feel like, oh no, I failed my publisher, or it didn't work out, or whatever. Whereas if you don't take that advance, and if you are going to work with the royalty, then from day one you've been earning money, right? You're like, wow, I published a book and I'm getting royalties. I
Right.
just wish more writers would see it like that rather than feel like the advance is the worth of their work. Which is
Interestingly enough, Karthika, so when I said that it got paid off this year, so I had gotten an advance for my first book, right? Zyada nahi tha, whatever it was.
You cannot mention the.
I'm not mentioning it
Okay,
because
okay,
it's a little awkward.
Okay, okay,
So anyway, but like I got the advance.
10 rupees.
So like it got paid off this year. Essentially, the advance finally recover ho gaya publishing house ka.
Okay.
So now whatever the copies sell, basically both of us make money. Second book though, Karthika, this is exactly what I did. I was like, मुझे नहीं चाहिए advance. I was like, I will write, I will do it. मेरा खर्चा करूँगा पैसा if we need for research or whatever. The only thing I wanted to charge them for was to hire a researcher. But even that I don't think is necessary anymore because I am doing all the research myself. So now the thing is that the moment one copy gets sold, my royalty starts. So then I start
nice.
earning, like right at the beginning. So
Yeah.
that's the calculation I did for my second book. And the other factor was that the book was commissioned during the pandemic. And they were saying that, listen, we are not really giving much advance anymore, and they give like a shit advance amount. And I was like, acha mat do hi mat mujhe.
Oh,
I mean, it's
man.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very, Karthika, like I wanted to ask you, and from many authors that you have dealt with, what is the advantage of publishing a book? Because paisa zyada aata nahi hai. Mostly 99% books se aata nahi hai. So how
Yeah.
does that
there is
figure?
a statistic somewhere that says that 5% of writers around the world live off their writing book writing. That's it, 5%. And I think that's probably true of India as well. Only 5%, little bit of that band must be making money off their books. Why write a book? I think since you both have written, you know that it's a compulsion that you can't do without, right? You write
Yeah.
because you have to write. Most writers, I think, write because they have to write. They don't do it for the money. They'd like to make money, and some of them do. But mostly they write because they want their stories to be told. They want their stories to be heard and read and discussed and sort of be part of the conversation in the world around them. Right. So that's one thing. There are others who write, like, say, a really well-known person may write because it adds another layer to their branding. They're already, famous sports people maybe or whatever, but they want to say, I know how to play chess, but I also know how to strategize, and I want people to know how clever I am and how I did what I did. Or my life has really been so interesting, I don't see why I shouldn't share it. But with celeb biographies and autobiographies, actually, I think more than the celeb, it's the publishers and the managers who push for those things to happen because it is a saleable project usually, and there is money to be made on all the counts. So people will go to them and say, please write, and so they will end up writing it. So that is a level of, I don't see why Roger Federer needs to write at all, right? But
Yeah.
if But if somebody wants to write like a biography of Roger Federer and he's willing to share the stories, then that book will happen. So I think people do it for different reasons. And of course, there is a whole new brigade of, don't forget, people who want to rewrite history or rewrite the
Yes.
past or show the world what is the real truth about XYZ. They will write for those agendas as well. And that we're seeing a lot more of these days.
Yeah.
I too started writing it as a calling card only.
Ah.
Also, I
As in
wanted
calling card, as in?
calling card as in like so again like as a teenager I was like मुझे लिखना है.
Acha, okay, calling
Calling
card.
card,
Okay, I
yeah.
thought like it's like a card. Hey, you know what, buddy? I've written a book. I deserve this invite.
Yeah. Also that.
Oh, also that.
To be
Nice.
honest, like
How
being,
how does that help? Like in social situations, I wanted to like just ask.
I
you this
just feel
question.
great when I tell people that I wrote a book. Also, because the act of writing a book, I think people don't really give much credit to that because it's hard.
Yeah, very
It's
hard.
very difficult to write an entire book, get it published, and for the editors as well as the author, it's a journey. It's a journey with yourself, and the act of like at the beginning, like as a teenager, I was like, "Arey, mere ko book likhna hai. I want to be an author,"
Yeah.
and I genuinely thought that I at some point I want to earn money just writing because I love to write. So then later, I think in life, I realized that I love to write, so that's what I'll do now. So with my journalism, with other things, etc. But I also like wrote a book. So the act of writing itself is so good for me. Like I really enjoy it. So that's why it just logically makes sense to me to write more books. And by the time I die, I want to write 50.
Oh,
Like, I mean,
wow.
that's my goal in life. I just want to write. I don't know who will publish it. I don't know. Maybe Karthika will publish one. Maybe someone else will publish
This
it.
is a
You
pitch,
do remember
Karthika.
long
You
ago I
thought.
approached you.
I know Karthika approached me also. We were
Yes.
working
Oh,
on we
wow.
were working on something. It actually derailed a little bit.
Yes.
And I think Westland only derailed a little bit. So
This was in my Harper days.
oh, this was in Harper days. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So we were working on some idea, but then something happened. But then
Then you
like
wrote a
someone
novel
else.
instead.
Yeah.
Nice.
The interesting thing also is that once you got one book out, no, other publishers are also like, अच्छा ये book लिख सकता है. So then now we can go like because I think Karthika, I think it must be a problem with you also that you don't know whether a person can write once you commission them.
Yeah.
The first
true, very
timers.
well. Yeah. But
So
so what you do is normally most editors are constantly trolling the newspapers, the magazines, these days of course social media, blogs, and long form journalism, all of that. Because when you come across a stylish writer, a writer who can do something interesting with their prose or poetry or whatever, then you tend to reach out to them and say, "Hey, I read what you said." Whether it's, as you said, it could be a Twitter presence or it could be Insta or it could just be a well-written essay somewhere. Then you tend to reach out to them and say, "Ki, I know you can write. Now, what can you write?" The other way of, I'm not sure you can write, but certainly you have ideas. That's the second category where there you are really being prepared to, you are prepared to say that this person clearly has the ideas, the expertise, the ability to have to share the understanding that they have, and I am going to be prepared as an editor, if required, to rewrite every sentence.
Oh.
Right?
Oh,
So
wow.
there is
that's
that
actually a thing, yeah.
part of it as well.
So the editor
But
has to like pen down the, like अगर मैं notes लिख के भेजूँ कि this happened, this happened, this happened, editor is like, okay fine, I'll convert that into a book.
no, not like that, but a very naive, very raw text sometimes comes in, very very basic writing, which we will then lift, as we call it, to a better read, a more interesting read, sometimes make it a little bit more complex read. So those things can be done. But I don't think that one can go from like really bad writing, like really there's nothing in it, to a great
Yeah.
book. But you can
Yeah.
go from basic writing but great ideas to a very decent book. So I think an editor will make that assessment and say, this is not possible, but this we can at least try and make a much better book.
Yeah.
Nice.
I have friends in publishing. So I'm married to an ex-publishing person actually.
Oh.
And I had ulterior motives even back then. कि मुझे book publish करना है तो maybe she will help me. She didn't help me at all. But anyway, the point is that the I've heard so many stories of this, Karthika, which you just mentioned, about ultra popular writers. And when you see their first draft, it's like, are you serious? Is this the same thing that went and got published?
Oh, so you got to read the first drafts of popular writing.
Side mein, because she was actually doing the thing that Karthika mentioned.
Oh
which
wow,
is,
that is so cool.
Yeah, which is essentially took like a raw piece of writing, which was like completely loophole filled stories, etc. And then she had to essentially rewrite it. And like, because popular
Wow.
author.
So this kind of editing is writing.
So Karthika, would you say that's writing?
Rewriting. It's rewriting.
It's rewriting, yeah. And
Because
I think
if the base, if the essence of the writing did not exist, then we wouldn't take it on at all.
Yeah.
But if you're a thriller writer, for instance, and I've done this, where you get a thriller writer who can do a great plot, who knows exactly how, I don't know, weaponry works, how strategy works, how politics works, but has characters who like really don't know how to romance or do, or have sex. And then you're like, okay, but you know what? I can rewrite that part of it. That's all right. But this person can do what is essential to the thriller, which is plot and character and that situation, right? So there might be books in which you intervene in parts, not necessarily the entire thing. And then there could be books where you really seriously need to rewrite every line, but you still think it's valuable for whatever reason. It could be that that person's life was really interesting. So I remember working on, okay, I won't say no names, but
No
this was a
names,
very well-known person,
Yeah.
and it was their autobiography, and they couldn't write at all. But they spoke into a recording machine. Somebody transcribed it. I received the transcribed text, and then I kind of wove it into a book.
Okay.
But you see, the voice was that person's, and that the anecdotal quality of it, the telling of the stories, all that was theirs. So the editor's skill is to take that and to make a little bit more out of it, to weave it into a structure, to make it more readable, to make it not have too many jumps in between. So you make sure that there's something to bridge the gaps. So we kind of engineer the text in situations like that, and fix it where it needs to be fixed,
Nice.
But the voice is still and must remain the author's.
Right.
It happened with me also actually. When you're writing a book, this happens when you're in a flow. So I write in a flow. I don't go back. Like once I finish the book is when I go back.
Right.
So I wrote that whole thing. So it was a plot, right? Like through and throughout I was writing one. And then later the editor will point out, Acha, by the way, there is a loophole here. Like, this part doesn't make sense. How did A go to C? Maybe you need to add a chapter here, which is B.
Oh,
So
okay.
then it will make sense of why this happened. So I think the editor's job is very difficult to basically also identify those things and have conversations with the author saying कि अच्छा बॉस ये नहीं काम कर रहा है, ये काम कर रहा है, इसको थोड़ा enhance करो, इसका थोड़ा ये करो. So it's basically structural engineering of a book essentially. And it's an art.
Yeah,
I
and
would say.
there are also in the minute sort of way. I remember a very fine writer once telling me that he was reading a scene where two people are sitting with each other and talking. And he showed me a particular point where he said, this one person has their hand on the arm of the other person. Okay. And then after a while, this person is saying something, doing something. And he's like, have you noticed? We don't know what happened to that arm. It's because that person couldn't have done the next movement if their arm was still on that person's, shoulder.
Oh.
Yeah.
So sometimes just that, being able to visualize what is happening on this page and make it a scene in your head, and then to see that, oh, right, that movement, you need to fix that, or the logic of that movement. It could be a physical movement, it could be metaphorically a movement, whatever it is. So I think that is also very important, the detail, every little detail, because you know what they say, right? Devil in the details and all of that. I think
Right,
God is
right,
also in the details only. Like you really got to get that right, and the book has to work.
right.
Nice.
This is where I have to take a break. And before that, a programming announcement. If you're watching this on the All About Now feed, we have another show called Page 10, which is hosted by Abbas Momin. It is our current affairs show. I know we've been getting a lot of praise for that show also, because we take like one piece of news from the last week and then we talk about it. I know you're enjoying it. So if you want to see more of that or anything on ELI 10, we have an email address. It's called allaboutnow@pratilipi.com. allaboutnow@pratilipi.com. You can write to us, give us feedback, tell us what more topics you want, who was your favorite Eulos, say Urjita, and then, go on and live your life. So I will see you after the break. After the break, we are going to talk about it from the writer's perspective. Let's do that.
Hi, this is Cyrus Rogan Brocha, Pyar Se Rogues. I've come up with a brand new idea. It's a premium product called Club Cyrus Says. It's an offer open just for you. Let me tell you about the product. We've got exclusive Cock and Bull episodes just for you. That's right, just for you. That means others don't get to see it. Also, you get exclusive footage, extra bits, the uncut version of the interviews with celebrities. And these are huge celebrities, not small-time celebrities. Only the big guys come on the show. So you'll get the exclusive bits that nobody else gets. The extra tidbits, special stuff, uncensored stuff you don't want to put out. That's just for you. And for our audio listeners, you get special ad-free content and early access to interviews and sessions and podcasts which nobody else will get. You'll get it first. You're the first people. You're Neil Armstrong. You're Edmund Hillary. You're whoever discovered India. You're that. And by becoming an exclusive member of Club Cyrus Says, you get the power. We transfer the power to you and you become the producers and you will decide what content or what happens on that show. You are the masters and we can't use words like that. People who work for the masters, basically. So guys, get in. Special audio features include, I forget. I can't remember what the hell.
Hello and welcome back to Explain Like I'm 10, where we are asking, how do we publish a book? How do I publish a book? How does Urjita publish a book? How does anybody publish a book? And how does Karthika publish a book? Because she's a publisher. So we are going to get into the writer's perspective now, which is... So Urjita, if you have an idea, for example, the first question a writer would have is, how do I approach a publisher? Maybe?
Yeah.
Or is that the first question that we'll have?
So if I have an idea, like I have many ideas. So another a little background about me. I'm also a writer, and I have written non-fiction, fiction. Abhi I'm writing fiction. I'm writing a web series for a company, and the one thing that I always like, every time you have a conversation with someone, every time you could be doing one of the most mundane tasks you can do, like banana chil rahi ho kuch bhi, and then you have many ideas and then you note them down. And like I have realized that, especially in my case, like if I don't really do anything about these ideas for a long time, my motivation to note down ideas also like goes down.
Right.
Because like a voice in my head says ki kya fayda hai? ये लिख के भी क्या फायदा है? So then like I have to do something, like either like I'm also a stand-up comedian, so either like write a set about it or make a reel. Like दोनों में से quick चीजें क्या हो सकती है अभी? Because I've realized that कि if it is a really good idea, then you need to send it out to the universe ASAP. Because otherwise, this has happened with me many times. I know this will sound very funny, but I kid you not, I had a very similar idea. Like the movie Tamasha.
Okay.
Very similar idea. And when I watched that movie, I was like, damn man, ideas do travel. So this I had read, I don't remember where I had read this, but कोई भी idea तुम्हारा नहीं होता until and unless you really like work on it.
Yeah.
So like ideas are floating devices. Like if you have an idea today, tomorrow somebody else might have the same idea. So you need to work on it immediately, just so that nobody else does anything about it.
Right.
But yeah, that sorry, what was your question?
No, I was saying, so if you have an idea,
Yeah.
No, this brings me to an interesting point, Karthika. Also, so like let's say someone like Urjita has an idea now. She's immediately thinking, यार इसका reel बनाते हैं या फिर like let's write a stand up on it and perform it on stage, which is immediate.
Yeah.
But a book though will take you years.
Yes.
So what is an author's motivation to actually turn an idea into book? Like, why is it that someone like Urjita will not have the thought कि अरे इसका एक ना book लिखते हैं? Like, I mean,
I
to be
think
fair.
different kinds of content take different kinds of forms.
Yeah.
And each one works to a different medium and a different audience. And with a different purpose in mind. So if you want to write a book that is, or you want to tell a story that is for here and now and has an urgency to it, then perhaps the book is not the right way to go. Perhaps you need to take to an immediate audio-visual form or something and go for it. But if you want to tell a story that is timeless, that can and should be read maybe 50 years from now, maybe 150 years from now. I mean, we're still reading 19th century texts, right?
Yeah.
People are still
Yeah.
reading the Bible and the Quran and the Gita and whatever else. So if your intention is to tell a story that is for all time and you are looking for some immortality, a book is a good idea.
That's
If
a
you're
very-
looking to set the record straight in a certain way, weighing your words thoughtfully, and you know that it's not just your words, but there's going to be a team of people working with you to make sure that the words are nuanced in the right way. And you're going to work with people who are going to target a readership in the right way. So essentially, you want to work with an entire publishing team. Then that book is the way to go. I think you have to decide which is the right thing. And
That's
if you are looking for a story that can take multiple forms, then the book could be one of those forms. So you might tell a story that could be, of course, a web series or it could be part of an act or anything, but it could also be a book. So I think we've lost that time when you had to make a choice and say it can only be one or the other. I think now you can say, oh, you know what? I have a story and it can be 5 things. And the book is
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah.
That's well worth the time then, because you're going to get multiple benefits from telling the story, reach 5 kinds of audiences. Among them, one of them is a book's audience.
You were
Nice.
saying?
Yeah, I that's a very nice way to put it. Like, so initially when we started talking about this, I was only thinking about the immediate consequence, right? Like, यहाँ पे बैंड्रा में कितने लोग मेरी book पढ़ेंगे, अभी कितने लोग book पढ़ेंगे. But then I realized कि oh yeah, it is like when you write a book, you're basically like making somebody 100 years down the line feel
Yes.
a little less alone.
Yes.
So that is
That's
actually a
nice way to
nice.
see it.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful, Karthika. This is happening to me right now. Okay, like so when my book was launched, ठीक है, थोड़ा सा mild reception था उसका. But recently, also because I'm doing more things and getting more popular on Twitter or something that I did,
Yeah.
thread goes viral. Then someone there is like, oh, इसका किताब पढ़ा है क्या, बहुत मस्त है. Then I think like 10
Oh,
copies get sold.
wow.
And it's
Nice.
like, I wrote it in 2018, right? And got published then. But I do realize that 10 years from now also this will be happening.
Exactly.
Also now I'm writing a non-fiction. So because I wrote fiction already, I'm writing a non-fiction now. So with the non-fiction, I know that this one will probably do better than that one. Probably because I feel like it's a stronger idea than I had. Again, my assumptions completely, but my publisher also thinks it is.
Okay.
So if that does well, no, my first one will also start doing well.
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
then more people will want to read my writings. So
Yeah.
that's what it's like with a reel. I know that after a week nobody will care. But with a book, I know like people 50 years down the line might actually read it, so it's worth putting in that effort. That's the
And you know,
idea
the
there.
thing is that with digital technology and with ebooks, you don't have to worry about the fact that the book will run out of steam and there will be no publisher putting it out there or printing it anymore because it stops selling. Maybe it'll stop selling large numbers, but it'll still be there in a PDF form or an ebook form for someone to access if they want to. And you can always go back to it. So
Nice.
that way, I think our universe is expanded to make sure that even if the written book or the physical form of the book is occasionally threatened, there are other ways in which the written word will survive.
Yeah. You know, so back when I started working on my first book, I had just one simple idea. So I worked in Parliament and I understood nobody knew anything about the Parliament. It was a shit show. And I wanted to show that shit show. Okay, boss, the Parliament that you admire so much and put on a pedestal, etc.
Yeah.
Actually, बहुत dumb लोग हैं वहाँ पे, सब लोग dumb चीजें कर रहे हैं और बहुत chaotic है. So that was one basic idea I had. And then I was like, oh, why not write about it as a non-fiction? First, I was attempting a non-fiction, but then I was like, yaar, itna detail mein ye kaise batayenge? Like, I have to explain everything. But then I was like, why don't I write it as a fiction? As like, sort of, I put in elements of my own life stories. Then I spoke to MPs, took their stories. Like, I was interacting with so many politicians at that time. I just stole stories from everywhere, put it into like a plot, and wrote it. And I wrote it with an intention of a web series.
Oh,
To be
wow.
perfectly honest, but किसी ने एक ने actually खरीदा है, maybe, but
Maybe मतलब क्या होता
अभी
है?
political situation नहीं है ना,
अच्छा,
like
okay,
they
okay.
can't publish it, they
Right,
can't do
right, right.
anything with it.
Yeah.
So after the idea part, so let's say Karthika, let's say you commission like an Urjita for an idea, right? What happens next? What is the writer supposed to do after that?
So if the writer has not yet written the book, it is commissioned on the strength of a proposal or an idea, then the writer would basically have to go away and write the book. But this too can happen in many ways. One is that the writer actually goes away, comes back a year down the line and says, yes, my manuscript is ready. Or it could be that, I'm going to start writing and then I'm going to send you the first chapter, tell me if it works. And then it could be like, listen, I've written half the book and I'm not sure. I'd like you to read it and give me feedback. And so it could be done in both ways. One is that there's no interaction really till the manuscript is written. Or it could be that you're constantly in touch and the editor is constantly helping shape the direction of the manuscript. So this happens, and then finally we arrive at a stage where we feel, okay, this manuscript is ready to go into the publishing sort of route. And then the editor will read it really closely and will come back to the author with what we call primary edits or structural edits. So there it could be like, okay, this character is really interesting, but this other person is kind of boring. Can you just make them a little bit more exciting? Or somebody else is doing something that is really not necessary. I remember asking Mr. Rushdie this once when he had come to the India Today conclave in Delhi. And I had only one question, which I'd been dying to ask him every time I kind of saw him somewhere around. So I went up to him and I was like, Mr. Rushdie, please tell me how much editing went into Midnight's Children.
Right.
And he was very good about it. He kind of talked in some detail. He kind of said, no, okay, and I wrote this, and then, the editor said that. And he said, one of the most important things was that there was a fairly substantial part, he said, which the editor told him was not required. And he said, this can go. And he said, I wasn't like thinking this could go. I wasn't prepared for that. But then he said, okay, he will think about it. And then he excised that bit in the manuscript. And he said, when he read it through again, he realized that nothing was missing. As in, because that part wasn't there, it wasn't as though the story had lost anything or something crucial had gone out of it. And so he said, I told the editor, you were right, we don't need this. And he agreed to take it out. And so that is a lesson I think a lot of writers and editors really do imbibe, that if something is not adding, not just detracting or distracting, but if it's not doing something absolutely essential in a book, then it can just go. So in the primary edit stage, you do things like that.
Yeah.
You point out what is necessary, what is not necessary, what could be redone, what could be done better. Maybe the ending doesn't quite work. It doesn't have the right fizz. Maybe in the beginning, this happens a lot to manuscripts. Somewhere in the middle, they tend to sag a little bit. It's like the energy goes out a little bit. So you've got to tighten belt and say, okay, from this point on, you need high energy again. So it's the editor's job to be able to say, where are the loopholes? Where are the sags? Where are the weak links? And point that out to the author and to say, please, can you fix this? And then the author goes away and fixes those and does the best they can. And then it comes back to the editor. Then you read it one more time where you're saying, okay, it's fixed, not fixed. What more needs to be done? Sometimes you may need to give it back. Sometimes you would say, okay, fine. This is as far as the book can go for the moment. Then you will put it into copy edit or line edits, where every sentence is looked at, every word is looked at, and it's edited at a very minute level. Then after, of course, it would go back to the author. The author would agree to the edits, or sometimes they'll say, no, I want to use this. Like I had a conversation with an author just this morning, and she said, the editor changed something and said, I had said the oil of jasmine in one sentence, and she's made it jasmine oil. And she said, but I don't write like that. I would write and I would say oil of jasmine. And I was like, I get that. Please retain it, So the author will go down every correction and say, I agree, I don't agree, I want to change or not change. And then you get to the final stage, which is the proofreading, where you're really looking at punctuation, grammar, typography, make sure there are no spelling errors, grammatical errors, etc.
Yeah.
And then your book is finally ready to go into press.
Wow.
This happened with me recently. It's actually very heartbreaking. So here's the thing. So when I'm writing, I take things very personally. I think most
Like
authors
every
do.
other
Most
writer.
authors
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
They're assholes to work with.
Yes.
Like 99% authors are assholes to work with because
I'd
so when
reverse
you're
that. I'd say 99% are fine.
Thanks,
that is
Karthika.
so sweet.
1% is an asshole, but I'm saying that this happened with me. So while writing my book, there was this one chunk which I had written. Took me days to write it, like literally days. I was sitting, I was like trying to figure it out. I was writing it. Finally, it was done. Now, my style of working with my editor is not like she will give me a deadline and I would just send it on that day. It's more like I will send you batches of chapters, like 2-3 chapters, because also like she gives me like shorter deadlines. So it puts a fire under my ass. So I have to write and I have a deadline to work towards. So that's my style of working with my editor, right? So I did this. And she cut off like a giant chunk of it. She's like, this doesn't work. Nahi hoga. And I took it super personally. And I was like, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to talk to you. This is not done. This I want this here, etc. It's like, Arey boss, but I'm telling you this doesn't work. Exactly what Karthika said, right? Because the entire narrative was sagging at that point because I was getting too much into detail and into my head at that point. I couldn't see it because I was so personally invested in it.
Right.
But a month later, when I read it again, I was like, I think she was right. Wo portion, I only deleted that portion then.
But I love how it took you like 1 month to realize that. Usually like people take like about 60 years to realize.
Yeah, it's actually that's why I love writing books. I think that's why I love writing in general because ultimately it's a dialogue. That first level of dialogue is when you're having it with your publisher like Karthika and your editor, etc. Second level of dialogue is with your audience once it gets published.
Yeah.
And audiences of the future also. And also like when I read my book now, 2018 ka, I was like, ye kya likha hai maine? I could have done a much better job at it.
Right.
And now, I mean, I hope I will do a better job of it. But then 10 years later, I'll be like, ye kya chutiya likha hai maine? What will happen to this?
So this is a very interesting point that you brought up, and let me know if I'm deviating from the conversation.
Go on.
But this is just something that, as a writer, like I feel, do you think that? So I had read this somewhere again. Ki, writing about love is always going to be timeless. Like anything you write about love and relationships, because that is something. Man is a social animal. You can't help but form relationships. So, is there any merit to this? Like I don't know how to frame the question.
No, I
but
think you're right at one level that novels, for instance, written with a political message for the time or something that's written for the moment. Often they have they're great for that particular time and not everything will last. But then on the other hand, you might write a book like 1984, which we pull up every now and then and say, wow, that got it right. 1984 is well past, but I think we'll be reading this forever. So there's those. But I think relationships are at the heart of almost every successful book, especially in fiction. That's really what makes it work. I mean, it doesn't have to be relationship centric, as in it doesn't have to be romance. It doesn't have to be about love in a certain way only. It could be about the love of a child and a dog. It could be, Nemo, because that was also about the love of parent and child and the world. So yes, relationships are at the heart of everything successful. But I think it's not a straightforward formula that therefore anything that has to do with relationships or romance will work. Perennially,
Yeah, of
no, I
course.
don't think
Yeah.
that's true. It has to be written with a certain kind of depth, a certain feeling, and the ability that it has to evoke that feeling in your reader. It doesn't matter if you're reading Georgette Eyre in the Regency romance. If you're reading it now and you still feel like, oh, there's that frisson between the man and the woman, that works. It does.
Yeah.
It's got
Yeah.
literally nothing to do with the fact of the kind of Regency clothes they're wearing or where they're sitting or whatever. But
Right.
I mean, Jane Austen, right? Classic case goes
I was
on and
about to
on and on.
mention
Yeah.
Jane
Adaptations,
Austen.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, I think the most powerful books that have remained with us are about relationships, and it's going to be forever the case. Like read science fiction, for instance, right? There are lots of people who really love reading science fiction because of the science of it, because they like the new worlds that are being written up, etc. I read science fiction, and I'm still most interested in that kind of science fiction where the relationships between the characters are in some way different or interesting or
Yes.
perennial. The science for me is
Yeah.
a secondary thing. So I guess in any genre that you work with, finally it comes down to how you write relationships.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm a big science fiction nerd also. A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet immediately comes to mind.
Right.
Hitchhiker's Guide.
Hitchhiker's Guide is
Yeah.
another great one.
Yeah.
There was this recent book I was reading, Andy Weir's book, I think, which is again about relationships. I feel like, that's so spot on, Karthika, because I'm rereading Asimov. The Foundation series.
Yeah.
First time I read it, I was more into it for the science. Now that I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, Hari Seldon and his son's relationship is so beautiful, and the
Yeah.
robot's relationship with someone else is so like touching.
Yeah.
I'm also noticing those nuances. I think everything that involves a human being would have that
Yeah.
sort of angle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But just coming to your point again, that one thing that, so Karthika, tell me, so like love and relationship, right? So this, you pick up this one idea which can be timeless as a into a book once
Yeah.
you incorporate it into a book. Is it necessary to do that though? Like, for example, just an example, like when you said like a book written in the current political situation, right? So if I
Yeah.
write, say, let's say a book about CAA and RC, right, about whatever, a very good look at the CAA and RC protest, etc. Is that also what you would say is timeless? Would that also count? Would have a timeless
Yeah.
thread in it?
So I think that would depend entirely on the kind of approach you take. If you're going to write about it as a persuasive documentation of how it all happened, how the protests were actually staged, what Shaheen Bagh looked like, who were the people who went there, what were the other venues of protest, etc., etc. You talk about those people who were there and what they set out to achieve. And this book then is about trying to get more readers to understand how it went and to become a convert to the cause, right? You
Right.
could write a book like that. Or you could write a completely different book, which is, say, a great photographer goes out there and takes photographs of all of these people at various venues protesting the CAA and lives around them. And this could become a photographic book, which is really about great photographs. And this
Right.
might be something you will
Interesting.
look at 100 years down the line and say, just look at the quality of this imaging, the imagination, the kind of people, what they wore, where they lived, how they lived, right? So it becomes a completely different book. And you might just do a completely third kind of book, which is it could be a book about two young women meeting at a protest place, getting to know each other, maybe falling in love, maybe becoming fast friends. It could be any of those. And that might just become a relationship book primarily. And the CAA protest is a background, is the setting,
Yeah.
right? So
Something like
I
the
think
book
it's
Thief.
so much about the way you choose to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly like the book Thief.
book
I was
Thief,
I was
yeah.
just thinking of that as
Like
well.
love story set against the backdrop of a war, or like a, you know,
Yeah.
s- I think they work really well.
Right.
And also,
I
I
have.
remember Granta had this brilliant collection of writing once on war. When you mentioned war, I thought about it. And they did a lot of diaries, like there were first person accounts. So this woman who was in Sarajevo at the time of the bombings and war, she was doing this daily diary about what it was like inside. And you can see people doing that on Twitter now in Ukraine, telling you what they woke up to coffee and then this happened and that happened in the day, etc.
Yeah.
And that, depending on how it's written, it can be this amazing document of human trauma, survival, all of these things, which doesn't matter which war it is, doesn't matter which period it is. It is a situation that will be replicated a million times over in the next million years that humankind may live if they live that long. And it will remain relevant. Only the specifics will change, but the emotions, I doubt that they would change. So, anyway, that's slight
Interesting.
digression.
I want to get to the photo book thing a bit. Do you have any coffee table books, by the way?
What is a coffee table
So
book?
like these giant books which have like a lot of photographs in it and
No,
right?
No, I don't have
Karthika,
any.
do coffee table books sell like with photographs and like whatever? Are they like a popular sort of consumer item right now?
Graphic novels.
They
you're
used
saying?
to be
Or just
more
books
popular in the
with
past.
photos.
Like for example, what Karthika was saying about like a
Like, I'll
Shaheen
show
Bagh
you.
protest.
I've got this
Okay, that way,
laptop
okay,
sitting
like
on
that.
some. I'll tell you what I've got under my laptop. I've got
Okay.
under my laptop a book that I had done, which is very much a coffee table.
Okay.
This is just the cover of it. Can you see it?
Yeah,
yeah,
the
the
story of
story of
Wipro.
Wipro.
Okay.
Yeah, with Mr. Premji at the back.
Oh,
Right.
okay. Right.
And inside, it was a beautiful book full of images, photographs, documentation of that many years of their work. But it cost some 3,000 rupees on the cover
Yeah.
price.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big problem. I mean, people love looking at coffee table books. You'd go into a bookstore and there'd be people browsing and looking at it, which is why, Meghnad, you'll see that in most bookshops, there might be one copy open of a book like that. Mostly they'll be shrink wrapped and you can't actually open it.
Right. You
Because-
can't open it. Yeah, that's true.
So they're hoping that you'll take the book away and just buy it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
not just stand there and look at it and say, "Bas ho gaya kaam."
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a tough thing. Coffee tables are very difficult, and most publishers will do them if there is some support, like production subsidy, a little cost of manufacture put in by someone, or a sponsorship, or the cost of just scanning these photographs and then design will be, you'll have to pay someone to do a real design that's expensive. The paper that you choose for these things is super expensive, and now that the Ukraine war has started, paper prices have gone through the roof. So coffee table books have become even more expensive to do. So there are so many factors that go into it that eventually publishers mostly just decide that we can't do this. It's not going to happen.
Okay, I have one final question, then we will end this. So let's say Urjita has written a book now. Sab kuch ho gaya, publish ho gaya. Let's talk about marketing. How do you market a book? Because
if you are Chetan Bhagat, you can become a judge on Nach Baliye, and that is.
But Chetan Bhagat's first book, for instance, 5 Point Someone.
Yes.
I read it in school, long time ago.
I liked it back then.
Yeah, absolutely.
3
Loved
mistakes
it.
of my life. 5 points.
You
of
did
my-
too, right, Karthika? Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like the only book I remember, only book of Chetan Bhagat's that I remember finding problematic as a 14-year-old was Love Revolution 2020.
You were
Which is the
14
one
when
I
that
read.
happened.
I was
I was
14.
much older. Okay, I was trying to process that, but okay. Yeah. But so Karthika, marketing. Let's say Urjita writes a book, etc. What are the different ways in which you can market a book? Who is reading a book right now? Also, I think that's an important question.
Yeah.
So it's hard to answer this in a general sort of fashion because different people read different kinds of books. But let's say you've written a book, and suppose it's a book that is fiction. Suppose it's a book that is relationship centric. Then I would say that marketing would take the more obvious route to take would be to get the book to early influencers and reviewers, which doesn't always pay off because there are lots of people who get copies and just keep them. and don't do much with them. But most publishing marketing people will send copies out to people that they think are influential on social media or in other ways to spread the word, and we'll send it out. Exactly, right? So if you talk of a book to a circle that matters in that particular field, then we hope that books will sell. So that's one like simple thing that people do to start with. But essentially, your marketing has to do two things. One is to create word of mouth through people who can extend that to people beyond the immediate community. So if you're reading Unveiling Jazbaa, and if you're like, I would automatically send it to someone like, say, Aayush Bhogle, because he reads, because he writes, because he reads sports books, he commentates, he has a huge following. So I would send it to him. But I would also hope that I would send it to people who are within the gender space, right? Who are reading women's histories, politics, etc. And say, okay, so I must make sure they also get to read this book because it's for them. And then I have to make sure that I get that book to people who are interested in Pakistan and the politics of Pakistan, and specifically the politics of sport and gender in Pakistan. So the main thing that a marketing person has to do, I think, in book publishing is to make sure they know who their target is, who the various groups of people are that they want to reach out to, and then find the way to reach out to them. So one way could be, of course, you could go to the Hindu and get a great review in the book magazine, because if you get a review in the Hindu literary magazine, almost immediately we see sales on Amazon and in bookshops. So there are some places that you know will make an impact. The Times of India has an interview, like a full page interview with a person who's just written a book. People will go out and find that book. So that's one way. The other way to do this is also to make sure that apart from reaching people and the media, you have marketing in retail, in the bookshops, because eventually people have to buy from bookshops as well.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, you have Amazon marketing services, AMS and all of that, digital marketing, make sure your title comes up in search optimization on Google. So you have all of that digital marketing thing. And then you have to work with retailers to do maybe events in bookstores to make sure your book is actually displayed really visibly, that you might need to sometimes buy space in a bookshop, but then you've got to decide whether you can afford to do that. So there's that entire level of marketing that you have to do. And then you have to go to, if it's a book like this, then you might want to go to colleges, to universities, to literary festivals, to other kinds of forums where a conversation can happen around the book and whatever is in the book, and get that word of mouth to spread. Because all of this goes towards one thing, which is create buzz, create word of mouth, create excitement, so that people will ask for the book, look for the book. If they don't ask or look, but if they see it somewhere, something should trigger that, hey, yeah, I've heard about this book, or I've seen this book elsewhere, and they were saying good things about it, so I want a copy. So that's really in a very short way, that's the entire loop of marketing, I think. And then you have the second round, which is, say, this book, right? This goes a year later. You might look at it and say, hey, World Cup's coming up. The Pakistan team's doing really good. We should have a new jacket for this book. We should put a new format out there. Let's do a new lookbook. So you might have a hardback which goes into a paperback. You might have a paperback which becomes a rejacketed new lookbook. And then you would try and do some social media around it, reposition the book, represent the book, etc., etc. So your marketing never stops with one time. It's not like a movie where you have the first few weeks and bas khatam ho gaya. You're saying a year down the line, how can I remarket this book? And for as long as that book is there with you and you have the rights for it, you're going to constantly look for ways to market it.
Nice.
Sorry. Are you seeing any success with influencers sort of pumping up your books?
It depends. If, for instance, if there is a book on security issues in India, and there are a couple of people who are really influential in that space, a couple of websites. So if those guys put out a book saying, read this book to understand how the borders are being threatened at this moment by China or something, immediately all the people who are really interested in that subject, like I have a concrete case where one book, which was Josie Joseph's The Silent Coup, which we published last year, somebody in that space tweeted about it and said, you have to read this book. And we sold 200 copies that day off Amazon. So that can happen. It happens very rarely, but it can happen. And we never give up. So we're always hoping for that one book it happens. So we'll keep trying this method now as much as we can.
Oh, it happened with me also, by the way. So,
Yeah.
one very popular politician actually tweeted about my book,
Oh wow.
and he
Oh.
was reading it in house arrest, and he was like with
Oh.
two other books, and that day we saw like 300 copies sold, and I was blown away. A, my book was recommended while he was
Yeah.
in house arrest,
Yeah.
and B, holy shit, ऐसा भी होता है.
Yeah.
No,
like
so
that's crazy.
the bestest thing that ever happened to any of the books I worked with was when some completely unexpectedly there was a Rajnikant movie, which God, I forget its name, but it opened with
Shivaji the
Rajnikant in.
Boss.
No,
Huh.
the film opens with him sitting in this chair. He's in shadow and silhouette, and you can't really see who it is. He's reading a book lying there like that. And the book's cover is shown. That day, we ran out of copies of that book because
Oh,
just
Oh
everybody wanted to know,
wow.
buy that book, read that book. It was astonishing. So, a movie can have that kind of impact, and Rajnikant can have that kind of impact.
Oh man.
damn,
That
that's
is
crazy.
great.
Also, so random.
Yeah.
I love it.
I know, completely random. And the thing is, I didn't know this was going to happen. Like, nobody asked us for permission to use
Right.
that book. So we didn't know. So we sold our copies on Amazon that day, and then we had to rush into reprint and sell them.
Oh, that's fascinating.
That's such a great problem to have.
Yeah, that's a
Yes,
great
very
problem.
Yeah.
Urjita, any final questions do you have?
I have many, but like we are running out of time, so
Go one, two, whatever.
So the one thing that I wanted to ask, like in the first half itself, that like what is the weirdest one-liner you have received, like for making a book? Yeah. Like something that made everybody in the room laugh. Like okay, इसने ये कर तो नहीं सकते, पर इसने दिन बना दिया हमारा.
I know who this was. This was someone who called me. It wasn't a written proposal. This was someone who called me and said, I have a collection of poetry and it's going to win the Nobel Prize someday. You want to publish it? And I was like, this guy doesn't even know that the Nobel Prize is not given for one book or one collection. So I was like, yeah, sure, please send it to me. And I kept a really straight face when he told me all that.
Oh,
But
oh, that's
that was
that's
probably the
hilarious.
weirdest I ever got.
But were his poems good?
No.
No. There's no surprises.
Surprises.
But yeah.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for this episode. Thank you so much, Karthika, for spending time with us. Are there any 3 books that you would like to recommend right now, which people should
No,
read?
you should have told me. I would have made my list.
Off
Three
the
books
top
to
of your
recommend.
head.
Okay. Off the top of my head, Rukmini S's Whole Numbers and Half Truths.
Okay.
Everybody got to read it for various reasons, which I won't go into.
Yeah.
Second, what would I say? Please go and read Alice in Wonderland again because there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So that's
Why?
Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, but why?
because
As in,
Alice
is there any
never
reason to
fades.
that?
Alice never grows old. Alice tells you absolutely wonderful home truths in a way that is completely magical. And
Yeah.
every time I read Alice in Wonderland,
Oh,
it tells me a different thing about the world that I hadn't noticed before. And it's
nice.
absolutely stunning.
That's a nice rabbit hole we all should venture in.
Yeah. Nice. Karthik, I have a very good edition of Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. It's like reversed. So if you reverse the book, the second book starts. And if you do this, it's like the first book. It's the
It's
most beautiful
illustrated.
thing I own. Yeah, it's illustrated. It's lovely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's 2. You've given me a third one to recommend,
Third
right?
one.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to recommend Unveiling Jazbaa, the book that you just held up, because it's just such an unusual thing for any writer to do, to devote
Yeah.
time and research and efforts into writing a book which he didn't have a publisher for to start with. And he wrote it, and he wrote a book. I mean, an Indian sports journalist is writing a history of Pakistani women's cricket. I cannot think of a more telling commentary on what writing and books can achieve than this one single accomplishment.
So I'm
very
reading
lucky.
this. I'm not a cricket guy. I don't understand cricket. I don't like the game, anything. So I'm doing an event with Westland next week for this book with the
Okay,
author
right.
Aayush Puthran. And the reason why they sent it to me was because they wanted someone like me who doesn't understand cricket to read this and basically also talk to the author about it. It's fascinating. It has like not just cricket, but it actually captures the history of Pakistan through the ages of how
Oh,
cricket has been
wow.
evolving and also women's struggles.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, of
playing a
course.
sport in Pakistan back then was a huge deal, and how these women actually changed the whole perspective of that, and also to a large extent, like views towards women in Pakistan.
Of course,
It's
yeah.
like amazing, like and it's very
Yeah,
well written. I mean, that's the best
it
part.
is. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Karthika.
No, thank you.
Urjita, do you want to plug anything? And then we will end this.
Yeah, so I'm a writer and a stand-up comedian. You guys can follow me on Instagram at the rate Urjita Wani, and you can also follow me on Twitter at the rate Wani Urjita.
Yes. Thank you so much, Karthika. Thank you so much, Urjita.
Thank you,
And
Meghnad.
Oh,
Thank
and
you, Urjita. It
also
was
you can
great fun.
follow, you can watch my podcast on IVM. Has it aged
yes.
well? Completely forgot.
And you can read and buy as many Westland books. Let me also plug them.
Yes. Please check out Westland ka
Yes.
publishing list and please buy books. It is now a part of Pratilipi and we are very excited to see what happens. And we are also like working very closely on a few things, so we will reveal that later.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yes, thank you so much, Karthika. Thank you so much, Urjita. And I will see you guys next week. Please like, share, subscribe, wo sab kar dena. But also, I would request you to please email us on allaboutnow@pratilipi.com with your feedback, etc. I would love to read some of your feedback on this podcast as well, about whether we are doing a good job, we could improve something, and who is your favorite ULOS, whether we can get someone else. I want to start this thing where people actually want to be ULOS on this podcast
Oh,
also,
nice.
where listeners want to also participate and become union leader of spectators. So if you want to, please write to me with your CV, I guess. I don't know, or why you want to be on this podcast. So we'll do that. Thank you so much. See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.